Engineers are at the forefront of infrastructural development, not only here in Kenya, but around the world. But a shortage of qualified engineers in Kenya is threatening the achievements of projects under the Vision 2030, the Big Four agenda, as well as the United Nations Sustainable Goals. What do we need to do as a country to boost the number of certified engineers? This week on Inside the Government, we're talking to the President of Institution of Engineers of Kenya, Engineer Nathaniel Matalanga. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here. That as a country, we have about 2,500 professional engineers against a population of about 50 million people. What exactly does this mean for us?
Thank you very much, Brian, for the question. What that means that the per capita of an engineer to the population is about 1 to 16,000, which is very low to achieve the development goals, the sustainable development goals. UNESCO recommendation is that you should have one engineer to 250. 250. Here we have 1 to 16,000. So as a country, we are facing a serious shortage of engineers. The training of an engineer takes a very long time. First, you have to be good in mathematics and physics in school. So it's not everyone that can do engineering. Second, you have to qualify to go to a university and do an accredited program. And this, the engineering education takes about 7 years at the universities. So we need to encourage young people to take up STEM courses. And we are also at the Institution of Engineers of Kenya, we are encouraging girls also to join, to do these courses so that we help to bridge the gap. Once these people train, we as a country need to ensure that we provide training opportunities for them to go through, to get experience, for them to be registered, to practice engineering, to offer professional advice. It takes 3 years after your training, university education. And as a government, we need to provide opportunities for these people in the various projects that are happening. We at the institution have asked government to consider reserving a certain percentage of the project for the training of an engineer, so that when the students finish the engineering education from the university, they are assured of a job. They are assured that they are able to go through a structured training program so that they become qualified as professional engineers. We have many students who take an engineering program and they don't get opportunities to progress, to get experience, to become certified engineers. Yeah. Because the government, which is traditionally supposed to be the main employer, around 1987, because I think the World Bank structural adjustment programs, they stopped employment of engineers. And this has affected the training of engineers to become PEs. We, at the moment, are trying to push the government to lobby that structured training programs, and this has started with the Engineers Board of Kenya. Now we have what is called the Graduate Internship Program. This ensures that after 3 years of graduation, when you go through this program, you will be able to be a certified engineer.
Help me understand this. In a country whereby annually about 2,500 graduate engineers, join the labor market, how comes we still have very few professional engineers in this country?
The main challenge is that when these 2,000 students finish the engineering program, they don't get opportunities to practice, to get experience, because you don't automatically become a certified engineer when you graduate. You are supposed to go through a structured training program for 3 years. The law requires you that you get 3 years experience before you get certified. So because of lack of opportunities, job opportunities in the country, some of these students don't end up engaging in engineering. They get attracted and they will lose them. So we are trying to concentrate at the moment that we need to lobby universities to ensure that when their students are finishing, they are able to be engaged in the various infrastructure program. The current government, through the leadership of His Excellency Honorable Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, they have invested heavily in infrastructure projects. Unfortunately, some of these projects have not provided training opportunities for local engineers. The local people have been left out in participating in these projects, especially the public-private partnerships, because by the time they come, the process of design has been finished, and most of the design is done outside the country. They're coming for construction, and this being a private partner, he is able to dictate the terms of engagement. So sometimes he even comes with his workers. So we want to lobby the government to ensure that for us as a country to be able to sustain this development, to be able to maintain these facilities that are being developed, we need to develop local content. The law requires that all projects should have 40% local content. Unfortunately, this has not been happening. So we as a country have lost it, and we need to straighten. We need to realize that we need to do something to grow our engineers. The Engineers Board of Kenya also tries to ensure that any foreign engineering staff coming in is coming to play a role that is not able to be provided locally. We don't have a local professional who is able to carry out this role.
You know, as things stand now, are there engineering jobs in this country that can be done that requires outside sourcing?
At the moment, yes, there are some, we can say, complicated engineering jobs, maybe during design, that will require, the local engineers, require outside assistance. There are things that we may not have done before. So we are lucky that some of our people, some of our engineers have had a chance to work abroad, and they have participated on these projects. So those ones, we can also look out for them and bring them back to help us. You've seen the ongoing expressway and the SGR. You know, the people who graduated after the construction of the original railway line, we've not had a chance to do another railway line. So when you say you are looking for a local person to do a design of a railway line for you, and the tenders are advertised that you have to have that experience, then you might not be able to find it. But now we are lucky that these projects are happening, so we are those of us who have a chance to participate in them, we are getting local training, but we need to make a deliberate effort as a country that we ensure that the design process for these projects, the supervision, is informed by the local content, and therefore we get our local people to participate. Mm-hmm. When the foreigner comes to participate in these projects, we need to ensure that there is a local person who is understanding him, so that at the end of the job there is transfer of technology to him, so that the next project can now be done by our own local engineers. Mm-hmm. But if we continue depending on foreigners, we shall not grow to a level where we are able to maintain these projects or do new ones on our own. We shall continue looking for foreigners. But the main reason actually comes with the way these projects are being financed. Mm. Because when you are looking for a financier as a country, sometimes you also bend down to his demands. You have to meet him. So most of these also, the financing, they come also with their own country's interests. They have also to provide jobs for their people. But as a government, we need to stand up. Our government needs to stand up and say, yes, we need to meet somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. And we need to be able to get local training for our people, so that the future development of this country is done by our local people. Development is very expensive when you depend on loan, and even if you depend on foreigners to give you advice, because they'll give you advice that is beneficial to them, not necessarily beneficial to your country.
I understand that for you to be certified by the Engineers Board of Kenya as a professional engineer, it takes you about 3 years, of training. Is there any way that process can be fast-tracked?
This is something that has been tried over a long time. It's the international best practice, as I've explained, that the training of an engineer takes a long time. And you have to be good in mathematics and physics in the STEM courses. So you might say the only way you can fast track it is ensuring that whoever has gotten through an engineering program is provided with an opportunity to be engaged with this 3-year training program. Kenya is actually, the Engineers Board of Kenya, which is a regulatory authority in matters engineering in the country, is trying to sign up to the Washington Accord. And for the Engineers Board of Kenya to sign up the Washington Accord, they need to be able to assure the rest of the international community that the engineering training and education in the country is up to the international standard. So this 3-year training period is what is internationally accepted. In some countries, it actually goes up to 7 years. So 3 years it is acceptable, but we need to ensure that whoever is coming out of the university who has undertaken an engineering education is provided by a training opportunity. And this can be done, as I said earlier, by ensuring that all these projects that are ongoing, they have a local content provision that a certain percentage of the work will be done by our local engineers. If you get a local consultant, for him to do the job, he will have to employ a local person, because as a local consultant, if you get work locally, you'll not be able now to pay a foreign person you import, because it will be very expensive. So you will have to employ a local person as your engineer. Then by extension, we'll be able to employ the graduate engineers. You'll be able to take them through this 3-year training program. So at the end of it, they'll be certified. And that's the only way that we can ensure that the 3-year minimum period ends up transitioning you to a professional engineer, which is possible. It used to be done before, but I said the challenge came when government, which is the largest employer, stopped employing engineers.
Almost 30 years ago, when the structural adjustment programs were implemented, and the government, one of the issues was to stop the employment of engineers, among other professionals in government. How can we then undo that damage that was done that long time ago?
As I've said, O'Brien, the only way to undo the damage is as a government, is to ensure that we look out and we encourage first young people to do engineering courses, because there is those ones who have been doing engineering, some of them get disillusioned that when they finish university they are not able to get a job. The only way we can do that is to be deliberate as a government. The project implementing agencies like we here in Nakura, this is the Kura project. We also have Kenha, and we have Kera, we have the energy sector, we have the water sector. To make a deliberate effort that you employ a local person to carry out things that can be done locally. You don't have to import foreign labor where we can do it locally.
How many engineers are employed by the government currently?
At the moment, I don't have the figure, O'Brien, but the many engineers actually, in fact, still most of the engineers, our members, are employed by government. Just there are a few who are in the private sector. Mm-hmm. Yes, but this is because of the need for them. The government has not gone out of its way to employ them. And we have now the national government and we have the county governments. Unfortunately, when the county governments were set up, some of the policies of ensuring that there is an uptake of professionals, especially engineers, to manage infrastructure dockets was not addressed. Has not been addressed. So you have in some counties a huge dockets. People like the chiefs of some of the engineering dockets who are not engineers. So we are saying that we have these opportunities, and it is possible to ensure that we absorb the 2,000 students who are graduating from engineering schools, to ensure that we don't lose them. Because the training of an engineer, as I said earlier, is very expensive. And many of these people are the best in their classrooms. These are the high achievers. So we don't want to take them through the program, spend a lot of money training them, and then lose them to do things that can be done by other people who are cheaper to train. So we need to look out for these people. As a country, a deliberate effort that a project like this one should be having probably 100 graduate engineers working here, because there is a lot of work. And if you know what this expressway is about, probably should have been easier to absorb about 1,000 graduate engineers, so that at the end of the project, these people who have been working on the project, there are 1,000 of them, will have gone through a structured training program, and they will have been able to transition to a professional engineer.
The UN recommends that for every 250 people, you have one professional engineer.
Yes.
In Kenya, you're talking about 1 to 16,000
yes.
Kenyans. What impact does this have on Kenya's development agenda?
It is a negative impact, Brian, because for you to be at the center of development, people need to appreciate, people need to know who an engineer is. And if you are 1 to 16,000, some people don't even know that they need an engineer. Unfortunately, this manifests itself into people like developers engaging non-engineers to do some work that should have been done by an engineer. So it is a really negative impact as a country for us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and even achieve the Vision 2030 and even the Big Four agenda. We need to pay a deliberate effort in the training of an engineer. The training programs in our country are good. Kenyan engineers who are trained, some of them actually are able to get work abroad, and they have come out very successful. We have people working in southern parts of Africa, and they are doing quite well. The people running some of the South African countries, the infrastructure programs are Kenyans. So our level of education is quite good, but we just need to ensure that more budget is given to the training of the engineer, more opportunities are made available so that students who are graduating from engineering schools are able to be employed.
In an ideal situation, how many engineers do we need as a country for us to say now we can operate normally?
Do your mathematics, Brian, and the population of Kenya is 50 million. So if you divide 50 million by 250, what do you get?
You need about 25,000?
25,000, almost 20,000, yeah. So that is the number of professional engineers we need as a country.
How long do you think that can take us to train, let's say, 20,000 engineers?
We now have training facilities for 2,000 engineers every year. So theoretically, if we don't improve the number of training opportunities, it will take us 10 years. But the good thing is that we already have a huge number of graduate engineers who unfortunately have not gotten a chance to practice and to transition into a professional engineer. So as a country, I think we should concentrate on this number, that we provide training opportunities for them to get experience beyond the classroom, for them to be attached to a project like this one, projects like the Nairobi Expressway, for them to get the requisite training so that they are able to be certified and registered by the Engineers Board of Kenya as professional engineers. I think that will be faster. And as we still encourage the universities to expand the training opportunities for young people.
Is there a correlation between the number of engineers vis-a-vis the quality offered by engineers?
I would say no, Brian, because there is a way that one becomes an engineer, and that standard has not been relaxed. You asked a question, can we shorten the period? And I told you it may not be possible to shorten the period because we need to ensure that whoever is giving engineering advice is up to speed and is able to be trusted. It's like when you go to see a doctor, you need to ensure that he's not going to give you a bad diagnosis. So even in engineering, it's a professional position It's a professional advice that people are expected to get from an engineer. So the number of engineers has no correlation with the quality of work. But it may have some relationship with the quality of construction. Because we are few engineers, some of the construction work is not then supervised by professional engineers, by qualified people. And that's why unfortunately, we've had incidences of poor infrastructure, even leading to collapse of buildings.
Does that then explain the reason why, we have been having rising cases of buildings that are crumbling, and in the process, some people are losing lives?
Unfortunately, that is happening, but there is another angle to the collapsing of buildings, because yes, we are few engineers. The developer might not know where to get an engineer, but the government has put in place a process to protect the common man. The government requires you that before you start a building project, you get the local government, the county government, to approve your drawing. The government has also put in place a registration system for contractors, who require that contractors are graded. If it is a higher demanding job, you need to have a contractor of a higher registration class. So the government has tried to protect the public by ensuring that if the developer was to follow the law, there will be no building collapsing. But unfortunately, you can call it due to ignorance or greed, some developers have tried not to follow the law. That they first don't use a registered contractor, they don't bother that they have employed a qualified professional engineer or to do the design for them. They think the engineer is expensive, and therefore they don't want to employ them to carry out the construction work. So if we were to follow the law, and the law is there, there'll be less and less risk of collapsing buildings. But unfortunately, we don't follow. You'll be surprised that some developers who have many construction sites, they will go through due process for one site, and then they will use that approval for the subsequent sites without caring what will happen in these other sites where they don't have an engineer who has designed it, they don't have an engineer who is supervising it. And that is, I can say, that is, I think, greed to make maximum returns on the whatever the developer is investing.
I know the Engineers Board of Kenya, has taken up these cases, to try and punish wayward engineers. But you, as institution of Engineers of Kenya, what remedial measures have you put in place to ensure that people who cut corners, or engineers who cut corners, they are punished accordingly?
You've rightly said, O'Brien, that the regulator is the Engineers Board of Kenya. So they regulate and they punish. We, the Institution of Engineers of Kenya, we carry out awareness sessions for our members. We also have the code of ethics for an engineer. So we don't expect that if you go by the engineer's code of ethics, you are able to give the wayward advice to your client. If we find that you have done and you are a member, we also have a way of disciplining our members.
How do you discipline them?
We can remove him, stop him being our member, and make recommendation that disciplinary measures be done by the Engineers Board of Kenya.
Has that happened before?
Yes, of course. There are unfortunately some of our members who have had their licenses suspended because they have either say that they have submitted drawings and they are supervising the projects which they have then not paid attention to, or they have not been present on the site. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that has happened, and some of our members have happened. Mm-hmm. But the major problem, the major problem has been construction sites that are not taken care of by professionals, not because the professionals are not there, but mainly because the developer decides that he can do this work without consulting engineers to save some costs. Of course, you're right. If we were more engineers in the country, the public will be more aware that there is an engineer, you need an engineer. Yep. Probably there'll be public awareness. We as the institution have tried to go what we call mashinani. We have set up branches in other counties so that the county governments are able to know that this is an engineer, and therefore for you to get your work done well, you need to get them on board.
Tell me this, I mean, we are now 12 years away from Vision 2030, and there are various projects that are supposed to be undertaken by engineers before we get to Vision 2030, or before we get to the year 2030. If we continue at the pace that we are continuing in terms of the number of engineers in this country, are we likely to achieve Vision 2030 projects?
Brian, you know, Vision 2030, it's a large plan by government. I like to believe it is a huge plan that requires a lot of government resources, and one of the missing resources that should be looked into is provision for resources to train engineers, provision of enabling environment for engineers to carry out their profession. But unfortunately, this has been a bit slowed down by the fact that we don't have enough engineers. And that's why you can see that the government is now looking for foreign contractors to try to achieve this Vision 2030. So it's one way, but we are saying it's not a sustainable way. It's not the cheapest way of doing things. We need to train our own. And therefore, we need more resources to be channeled through these areas. We need an enabling environment for the practice of engineers. We need to ensure that these infrastructure agencies, we have said it before, like the Kenha, Kura, Kera, with the energy sector, we have the water sector. These should be led by qualified engineers who are able to ensure that value for money is achieved, and that will help accelerate the achievement of Vision 2030. From my point of view, I don't know whether as a country we shall achieve it, but I know we are part of the effort. We shall do our best as engineers in this country, if we are enabled and if we are given a chance to ensure that Vision 2030 is achieved, even the Big Four agenda that is coming to a close very soon.
Very good. Finally, from you, I know you've been clamoring for the government to set aside 0.05% of the infrastructure budgets, for the training of engineers. Have you made any inroads in regard to that?
Thanks, Brian, for that question. It's very good. Yes, we have made presentations to what we think are the right places, and we think we've been heard. What we are waiting for is action to be taken. Sometimes you see that there is a clear, like the road maintenance levy fund that is managed by Kenya Roads Board. If just a small percentage of that can also be made available to the Engineers Board of Kenya for the training of engineers, we as a country will go a long way in achieving this training of engineers, and therefore accelerating the achievement of Vision 2030 and the achievement of the Big Four agenda.
Engineer, thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us, and of course for explaining to us some of those issues.
Pleasure.
Asante sana.
Thank you very much for having me.
You have heard it from him. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.